Hi, I'm Jonathan Fields. This is Good Life Project. My guest today is Emiliya Zhivotovskaya, and she's got a pretty incredible journey of coming to this country, actually, and then building a pretty fascinating organization and practice that's helping a lot of people. So really excited to get into that with her. So welcome. It's awesome hanging out.
Thanks, Jonathan.
How'd I do with your name in the first place?
You were fabulous. That was great.
All right, it's taken me like 10 years to ask you how to actually pronounce it, so.
I will send people your way if I need for them to say it. That was perfect.
Excellent. We'll refer them to this episode. So you have a really interesting journey. We're hanging out in New York right now, and you're the head of something called Flourishing Center. And we're going to get into what that is and how you work with people and that helps people. But you have a really interesting personal journey of, cross-continental journey. Take me back a little bit through that.
Absolutely. So I was born in Kyiv, Ukraine. I came here when I was a young child with my family. And interestingly, looking back, I found out that one of the reasons my family immigrated here was partially because I was born 90 miles from Chernobyl. And there was a lot of people who were getting really sick. My brother was getting headaches, and also the fall of communism. So it wasn't necessarily,
as an aside.
Yeah. So it wasn't a great place to be. So I'm really grateful my family decided to make the move to come here. And I always think of how being an immigrant myself and being of immigrant parents, I feel has always made me rather determined and very resilient. And so a lot of people that I know that have immigrated to this country growing up have always had a very different way of being about them. Because in some ways you have to parent your parents. You come into this country, you pick up the language faster, you pick up the customs faster. So it was a huge part of my journey when I look back, even though I'm American. Lived here for most of my life. I look at how that hard work and perseverance that I learned at a really young age still carries through into the work that I do today. So we moved from Ukraine to Brooklyn and then to Long Island and then here in New York City, and have been here ever since.
So how old are you when that actually?
I was 6.
Okay,
yeah,
so you're
6
pretty little.
When we moved here.
But you still speak, I've heard you speak with your family, and so the language has stayed with you.
Yeah.
Was that something, I'm always curious, because is that something is that all that's spoken at home, or is there a mix, or was it an effort to say we want to make sure the language and the culture stays with you?
It was interesting because when I was younger, especially growing up with a lot of immigrants, we tried not to be whatever our native culture was, and so I didn't want to speak Russian. And what happened oftentimes is my parents would speak to me in Russian mostly, and then I would answer back in English. And then it kind of hit me when I was in middle school, and we started to take on Spanish, and everyone was about, yeah, you got to learn a second language, and I was like, I already have a second language. Maybe I should preserve that one. Right. And so I make much more of a conscious effort these days to just keep my language. It is harder to have more complex conversations. For example, I could never teach a positive psychology seminar in Russian, but I'm really grateful that I can fully understand what people say and I can communicate. And I'm grateful that at some point it hit me that I should hold on to the language.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see like that dynamic. It's also interesting because you're talking about sort of like the work ethic of people who came here from another country. Yeah. And it is interesting because you look at, and I guess a lot of people, I think, and I don't know what it was with your parents, but come and they, maybe they were professionals in the country that they came from, or they had, these interesting jobs, and they come here and it's almost like they're starting from zero again. You hear so many stories of people who come and maybe they were doctors or lawyers or whatever it is, and then they come here and they're driving cabs or they're doing whatever it is they need to do to take care of, put food on the table for the family.
Yeah, that's exactly what my family went through. My parents were both, upper middle class and very, very well educated and spent a lot of time in their individual professions. And when they came here, they couldn't do those things. So my father became a cab driver, and my mother continued to work with people, but she was never able to go back and teach and be in the classroom the way that she wanted to be. So it was really interesting to see that. But again, the work ethic of you put your family first and you do whatever you have to do has definitely carried through. And I also think back to even being in history classes as a kid growing up, and you learn about the immigrants that came here pursuing the American dream. There's something about those lectures that always stood out for me, because it was like, I guess that's what I'm here to do. Yeah, I'm supposed to pursue the American
You're like,
dream.
they're talking about me.
Yeah, it's like, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. It's like anything is possible. But I definitely did feel that, and it made me very very apt to just take on any opportunities that came my way, because there's like everything kind of seemed like an opportunity. And I think that that's really contributed a lot to where I am today as well, is just always saying, yeah, let's try that.
Right. So let's kind of zoom the lens forward, and then we'll piece in little pieces of it also. We're hanging out in New York City today. And so you come to this place where you came to the country, and the family sort of basically started over, and came from a place where you were really fleeing to a certain extent because there was some bad stuff happening. And you went through school, and at some point you start to develop an interest in people, an interest in how people tick. Yeah. And I want to go a lot more into what that is and how it's manifested, but were there early sort of like awakenings in you from personal experience that started to cultivate this?
Yeah, and I think that the biggest, well, firstly, the thread of wanting to help people, I feel I've had my entire life. And so I can see as a child always that willingness to extend myself to others. And I always heard, even from being like, I remember 5, 6 years old, everyone saying, you're such an old soul. And I had no clue what that meant, because you tell a 5-year-old like they're an old soul. And I asked
what
my
do you
mom,
mean, 7, 8?
What do you mean? And my mom would say, because I even remember, I think they say your earliest memories go back to being 2 years old. And I have one memory of being 2 years old, sitting in my carriage, and adults marveling at how calm and quiet I was, and how I would just look at people and observe people at a very young age. And of course, that whole calm and quiet thing went out the window. And now I don't shut up. But so I think that was the thread. And then going back and looking at more pivotal points, I think the most pivotal was when I was 14 and my brother passed away. And it was a very traumatic freak accident. He was swimming at night with his fiance and friends in Long Beach, and the riptide hit, and his fiance at the time started drowning, and he ran in to try and save her, and she survived, and he passed away with one other person. And this was like, my closest encounter to death ever. It was right here in my family. It was my brother, the only sibling I had. And I just saw my whole family get devastated, and obviously so. And that actually became a huge spiritual experience for me, because suddenly all these I almost want to call them gypsy women came into my life, or people I'd already known, that kind of turned me onto this concept of spirituality, because things had started to happen in my life that really gave me a visceral sense, like, you know what? I think my brother's still with me, and I think that there's more to life than just our physical form. And at the same time, I also remember making a conscious decision that I was going to use this as a growth experience.
So at 14, making that decision, which is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, I remember sitting in my room, and I remember seeing like the way other people in my age group would handle stress of any sort, whether it be parents getting a divorce, or needing to move, or having heard of other people losing someone. And I just saw a lot of people get angry and, drink alcohol, and of course they're 14, but still, like, do things that were really toxic. And I made a conscious decision that somehow I'm going to use this to become a better person. And I remember I hated reading when I was a young kid. My mom would always try to force me to read books, and my brother was the bookworm. He was the one who would just devour book after book after book. He was really interested in school. He was a great student, and I guess in some ways I always compared myself to my brother, and it was like, well, I'll never be as good as him, so why bother trying, right? A little fixed mindset there. And it shifted for me. Like, I really felt like I felt really inspired to want to carry my brother forward. And so I found myself becoming a better student. I found myself also treating life with a lot more ease and care. Like, I found that some people, they hear those cliches, like, don't take your life for granted, or don't go to sleep angry at someone, always tell them you love them, and all these other things. And I remember the last conversation I had with my brother, he had called, and I talked to him on the phone and then handed the phone over to my mother. And I usually made it a point to always say I love you before I hung up the phone. And I didn't say it. And I handed the phone to my mom, and I was like, oh, I didn't say it. And then I was like, well, maybe I should take the phone back and say it. And I was like, no, they're just going to hang up soon anyway. And they're still talking. I was like, well, maybe I should still say it. I was like, no, it's fine. He'll just think he'll make fun of me. I'm, just doing this silly thing. And then, I held on to that for years. Yeah, why didn't I just tell him that I loved him? So I made it a point to always tell people that I love them and I cared about them, and it just became much more much more focused in that way. But I'd always been interested in helping people. Like, I was really blessed at the school that I went to in Long Island, in Oceanside. They had a lot of programs that were really unique and honored that social emotional intelligence in children. So I got to be a natural helper. And we're in middle school, and they talked like, we're going to take this survey of the school, and you might be chosen to be a natural helper. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I hope they choose me. And what that was they scanned the school to look at who are the people that other kids go to when they're having a hard time, or when they because they found that suicide rates were going up, rates of eating disorders were going up, drug abuse was going up within the schools, and when kids had a hard time, they weren't going to their parents and they weren't going to the counselors, they were going to their peers. And they said, well, what if we can train the peers in some basic listening skills of what to do when people come to them, but also give them the resources to know what they can handle and what they can't. So I got trained as a natural helper, and also I then later got into peer mediation. So it was all these psychology skills that I was learning, all these coaching skills I was learning at a really young age that I would have never really thought of that, but they were just the things that I naturally did. I was always the person in my group of friends that wanted to listen, wanted to help. People were going to for advice, and then later on in life to learn how to coach is like you had to learn not to give advice, then throw all that out the window. Right. So I think that really set me up in so many ways. Like, one was just a sense of, in three ways. One was just a sense of energy, and that there's something more to life. Made me start to ask questions like, what happens when you die, and you know, what is it? Just the body decomposes? What is it? Like a real fascination with death.
But no, it sounds like not a morbid fascination.
Not a
just
morbid,
a genuine what happens.
Yeah, and I remember I was even offered to be a part of a group at school, a bereavement group, and I went there actually almost throughout all of high school, maybe 3 or 4 years. And I really appreciate even just being able to go through my story like this for you. It's so interesting. I've not really looked at this in a long time. I remember being a part of a bereavement group, and within the first few months of bereaving, I then found myself taking on the role of what the group head, like the teacher, was doing in terms of like asking people to tell me about the person who's passed on. And I started to notice these themes like, yeah, we can just feel better when we honor the person's memory, or we create a story as to why it happened. And so very quickly the teacher was asking me like to come in and like, oh, you're coming to the group today, right? Like, we really need you. Right. I found myself already being able to help people by sharing my story with them. So there was this definite sense of spirituality and connection with death and with life, and what does that mean? The second was that role of optimism and resilience. Like, I found myself looking at what does it mean to be a resilient person? And later on, as I explored positive psychology, it was the sense of like, wow, I've been really fortunate and I've been resilient, I've been pretty optimistic most of my life, but how does that actually work, and can I bring this to other people?
Right. And also I think that's, I mean, was there a sense in you that that's unusual?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I felt that it wasn't until finding in college and in graduate school and finding this whole concept of self-help and personal development, like the whole industry existed around this, I felt that it was actually difficult to be a happy person, a happy teen growing up. You know, it felt like there's this, like, you know, I at some point I smoked a lot of cigarettes and wore black and was really angry at the world, and there was this sense of like, yeah, that's what you should do. Like, you know, my brother passed away, my dad became a diabetic within a month of my brother passing away. My mom got ovarian cancer within a year of my brother passing away, and she battled that for 10 years. And I always knew that, like, no matter what doctor's appointment we went to, that it was like, she's this way because she lost her son. You know, she's this way because could barely cry about it. She's this way because anytime anybody talks about him, she starts shaking, you know? And like, there was this almost mind, body, spirit connection there happening. And so I thought to myself, like, yeah, there's just a lot of people who are unhappy, but there's also this culture of it not being cool to be just happy and grateful.
It's too Pollyanna.
And
it's like, well, that's the whole thing. I mean, like, so I'm sitting here and I've known you for years now, and I'm listening to your story, and I'm learning a lot of new things about you, and like, I wonder if somebody looks at you to a certain extent and says, this can't be real. How can you go through what you've gone through, you know, at still a young age, and still be so okay, and still be able to find joy, and still be able to, like, just, you know, like, you've got to just be like burying it somewhere. You can't actually, but I don't sense that that's your reality in any way. But I think I wonder if people look at you and say, well, is that real, or is this gloss of everything's okay? And like, how do I?
Or is it a genetic thing, for example? Like, am I just part of the, am I just naturally happy? And it's interesting because the research on resilience used to first, just 20 and 30 years ago, look at studying resilience amongst children and thinking that these children that made it through and persevered and outshined even when they were in the darkest of circumstances as being superhuman. Like, they looked at, what do these kids have that other kids don't? Like, maybe it's a genetic thing, maybe like maybe they have super immune systems. And then what they realized was that actually wasn't that they're just superhuman, as there's some basic traits that affected that. And at first, the first one that they found was that they had a mentor, or they had somebody in their life, regardless of the circumstances that they were in, that either believed in them, that created a safe space for them, that mentored them through that. And I've had amazing teachers, and I think I've had amazing teachers, and I've had the foresight to say, this is an amazing teacher, and I'm going to study from this person, and I'm going to take in everything I can get, which I think is the immigrant mentality. It's like, I learned how to speak English by watching cartoons. You just sit in front of a TV and you just take in whatever you get, and you're so grateful at anything anybody's willing to give you. So I've always been really attuned to those things. And the other one is their mindset, and the way in which they explain the world to themselves and what they think about. So high school was a real fascinating time. I had lots of mentors that within like the psychology world. I was given leadership opportunities. I was captain of the cheerleading team, and that was a big thing for me. And at the same time, I was also, at the age of 14, I started becoming a party entertainer, which is in some ways, I think, one of the other more, like 14 was this big pivotal age, is like this, big shift in my trajectory. About 6 months before my brother passed away, I got really fortunate to start working with entertainment companies, DJ entertainment companies, and entertain people's parties. So bar mitzvahs and sweet 16s and communions and birthday parties. And it was a profound opportunity. First, I had to lie about my age for a good, 8 years of my life. That was fascinating within itself. But I got to in some ways develop this ability to connect to other people, to be someone that energizes others and is a crowd, and think on my feet, and all these other things. So in some ways, being a party entertainer also prepared me for a life of learning, of creativity, of being someone that works with a lot of people. So
yeah, I wonder also, so there's one side of you that gives out, that gives light to the world. But the other side is so deep into helping people who are in pain. Do you ever feel like you're taking on, in the work that you do, because you work with a lot of different people, do you ever feel like that you're actually taking on some of their sorrow or their pain, or does it affect you?
I find that with all that, it's like this, like life tends to be this spiral where you revisit a lot of those life lessons that you're meant to get, but you just revisit in different ways. So it's like that process in terms of feeling like I'm a healer in the world, coming back to that in lots of different ways is definitely a theme. And at the same time, having lots of people that come back in and remind me to not take it on. Because even being trained as a natural helper when I was in high school, that was like the first thing that they taught you, is like, you have to take care of yourself. And because definitely as a young kid, when all your friends come to you for your problems, the first thing that happens is you don't go to anybody else with yours. And so one of the key things with natural helpers was that, once a week we'd have a group where the natural helpers met, and they felt safe to say, well, here's what's not working in my life. Or because you do start to feel like, wow, everybody's got their own stuff going on, and they're barely able to handle it. That's why they come to me. And so I'm this person that can handle all these things. And so being trained as a coach, being trained in positive psychology, being trained as a healer in lots of healing modalities, whether it be Reiki or body work, even as a yoga teacher, I've been taught this so much by people, and then conceptually I know it, and it's always a practice to keep coming back to. It's also a practice to keep coming back to when I know I'm out of alignment with myself, like when I've coached too many sessions in the week and haven't received my own coaching, or haven't gone for a massage in a long time. Like, I'm really grateful to have cultivated that self-awareness when I need my self-care, but I also think of it as a process. Like, I always have to keep coming back to learning that same theme and feeling like things are all over the place, and then I stop, I'm like, oh, it's because I haven't stopped to focus on me in a long time. Right. So it's still a working practice.
Yeah, no, I think that's the word practice is the big part of it. You know, it's just a constant practice of learning and growing, and I like the spiral thing where you kind of keep cycling back and
and then you hope that you're at a different level than you were just you know, the last time.
So you're not going in circles, but you're actually spiraling upward.
Yeah.
When we first met, I was running a yoga center in New York City, and you were a student and then part of our teacher training program. And at that same time, you were also going through the Applied Positive Psychology Master's Program at the University of Pennsylvania. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what drew you to that path.
Yeah. Well, what drew me to the positive psychology path was that once I entered college, like all college students, I started asking myself, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I was blessed to have a mentor, Dr. Shikumar Rao, who introduced me to, again, self-help, spirituality, psychology, in a way that was very different than what I was learning in my psychology classes, where I was studying disease and how vision works and all these other things. And so I got really turned on to this concept of self-help and self-improvement. And when I found out that there was a profession called coaching, life coaching, I was like, I have no clue what that is, but sign me up, because that's what I've been doing my whole life, and if I can make a career out of that, that's great. Because I didn't really feel drawn to being a psychologist or to being a therapist. In some ways, I almost felt like that was too easy. It's like, I've been doing that for so long, you know, like I want to do something even bigger in the world. I don't know what that's going to be, but it's like I could do that. That would be nice, but I want to go bigger. And so when I found out that there was actually a scientific study supporting a lot of these concepts that I found to be really useful in my life, and that there's this opportunity to learn about how to help other people become optimistic. Well, first I wanted to know, like, could you? You know, right. I was pretty sure you could, but like, could you teach other people these skills? I was thrilled, and I was so grateful to have been accepted to UPenn for the most remarkable educational experience. One of the many that I've had a chance to be a part of this community of people that are improving the world, and then also to learn from these researchers who are really on the leading edge of flourishing and all these kinds of
because that program really had, like, all the biggest names in the world of positive psychology were your professors.
They were, and it was so early in the field. Like, you know, now you can get a book from Barbara Fredrickson and from and from all the professors that we had. Before that, very little had been published on it. There's a lot of peer-reviewed journal articles, but it hadn't been really translated into the mainstream just yet. So it really did feel like it was like at the cutting edge, and they still are as a program. But even more still, because now you can even learn. You can find more YouTube videos of these people. Right. But it was like, at the time, it was really unique. So I was really grateful to have done that. And then the yoga was, honestly, because I had always, in the back of my head, wanted to learn more about yoga. I had an eating disorder for many years of my life, and I felt that yoga and gratitude and all these kind of things like really helped me. And so when I first got into the yoga teacher training, my intention was actually just to learn it for myself, because I'd always had this like love-hate relationship with exercising. Like, I would try to force myself to do it when I was traveling a lot, and if I didn't have sneakers with me, I could say, oh, well, I can't go to a run, can't go to the gym, guess I'm not doing anything. And I said to myself, if I learned how to be a yoga teacher, I could always exercise no matter where I was. So it was really just for me. And because I'd been a party entertainer, I always worked on the weekends, and so I was never able to really do a yoga teacher training. They were always on the weekends, and the way that the master's program was set up, I was able to do a 1-month intensive of yoga teacher training, and it was crazy to be in graduate school full time and then do a 1-month intensive yoga traiing. But I felt really called.
Were you party training on the side at the same, or party entertaining also?
Yes, yeah, I was still party entertaining too. Right. I had to pay the bills, so I had to do that. And so yeah, it was a whirlwind of a month, and it was interesting because what I thought was just going to be personal development, which is kind of a theme in my life, like what I always thought I would just do for myself. It's like something that impacts me in that way. I just always have to. I feel like I want to give it away and share with other people, because how could you not? So where I didn't think I was going to be teaching, I jumped right into teaching, like 5 to 6 classes a week,
right.
just because I was so excited to be able to start teaching. And I also there started to see that there was this void within positive psychology to not honor the body. So I was learning this whole like scientific study of yoga from you and from Lauren Hanna, which just set off this huge journey of studying from some of the best teachers in the world of yoga. And yet positive psychology was so neck up. And we would sit in these classrooms and we'd just learn all these ideas. And it was like, well, if you want somebody to calm down, like I've got some yoga poses that will work a lot better than that. So I also started to get this really strong interest in uniting the work on mind, body, spirit, and really appreciating that positive psychology was taking a research-based approach to this. And so that time was also a nice crucible for those ideas.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because I mean, we've had so many conversations, and one of the things that I think is so awesome about you is that you've got this really soft, spiritual, sort of woo-woo side. But at the same time, you've got this wicked interest in science, and you're incredibly well read and researched, and you present on these things, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm curious how sort of like the science and the spirituality, which sometimes seem to be disconnected or even opposing each other, like how does that spin around in your head? Because you seem to put together this synthesis of hardcore research and things that you just know.
Yeah.
In a really fascinating way.
I think the reason that came about for me was because I was so young doing what I was doing. And I had gained a lot of spiritual awareness at a really young age. And I also, I believe I came into this world with humbly with a lot of that. And it was like, I felt that the only way I could actually do this and be taken seriously was if I had research behind me. Mind you, I really appreciate research and science and finding out how things work, and I love being able to test things and love running my own little mini experiments, and I love measuring things, and there's a part of me that definitely appreciates that whole world. But it's definitely, there are definitely times where I think of it as like, it's a lot of hard work. I could just as well be like, here's what works, people, just go and do it. Right. But I really found that I intuitively just knew that to be taken seriously with this, I needed to explain to people not just what works, but how it works, and not just conceptually actually showing that, hey, research does support this. Like, we can study this. This is important. And so it came partially from that insecurity that I had. Although ironically, when I actually jumped into doing this work, my age has never really been all that much of a problem. But I had that insecurity, and it was like, well, I'm 20 years old, and I want to be a professional life coach. I want to be a professional speaker. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but that's what I know I want to do. And so I'm really grateful for that. And then also it's like the research is this rich, it's like being having an Easter egg hunt. There's all these delicious things, and they're so fascinating, they're so great. And then you just have to find them, and so that's kind of how I see it. It's like, how could you not want to know about what these amazing scientists are doing to help understand the mind and help understand the body? And I have always had a really deep fascination, like, how does the mind work and how does the body work? And
right.
I could just eat that stuff up forever.
No, and it seems like you're just constantly devouring research and looking at the deeper science and neuroscience of why we do what we do. You get to a point where you graduate the program and you're doing a lot of coaching, a lot of speaking, consulting.
I first freak out. I know.
Okay.
It wasn't that easy. No. I first had a freak out moment, which is like, whoa, I just downloaded a lot of stuff. I mean, it was an intense year. It was a year of yoga, of learning this practice and how to teach it, in a year of positive psychology. And so I think, like many people who are in the healing world or in the service world, we are so good at finding all these things, these gems that we want to bring to people's world, all these like Band-Aids of like, here, I can help you with this and I can help you with this, but they never actually learn how to make a practice for themselves out of this, or how to start a business, or how to even get clients. So I almost felt like I felt like the person out on the street that's got a, you know, coat filled with like watches and jewelry and all these things, and I was kind of like, what do you want? You know, I got lots of stuff for you. But I didn't really know how to bring it to people. So I, for a few months, was like, how do I get people to take me seriously or to want to work with me? And I was like, I need a PhD. That's what I need. If I had a doctor before my name, then people would respect me and they would take me seriously. And what kind of doctor do I want? And then I thought about how fascinated I am with nutrition and with the body. And I was like, maybe I should become a naturopath. So I actually went back to school, taking prerequisite courses in organic chemistry and anatomy and physiology and biology, thinking that like, yeah, I'm going to need to do this, because I was really afraid that I could actually start a practice on my own, coaching or speaking. And I'm really grateful that I learned about, you know, after just a short period of time of doing that, and it was miserable. I went from like happy, clappy, but authentic, positive psychology work to being in a dungeon studying like organic chemistry with like, you know, people who had like failed it because we're at a community school and just like trying to get by at their grades. And I was really, really blessed because, like I said, I've had amazing teachers, and I had an opportunity to study with a person who taught internet marketing, who taught like the business side of starting your own practice and becoming your own brand and becoming your own entity. And I feel like I applied, you know, 1/100th of all the things that this person shared with me, and it was definitely enough to get me to start focusing on saying, you know what, if I were just to go in for another degree, I would just be running from myself and running from, I'd be giving into my fears. And so I stepped in and was just like, no, I'm going to do this. And then I started to build my practice little by little. I started giving workshops, started with, you know, meetups of like 5 to 6 people. Little by little that grew. Little by little my coaching practice grew. Everything was always referral based. I never advertised or anything. But I just kind of like kept at it and kept trying to like, you know, just throwing a lot of things out there all at once and seeing what would land.
Yeah, and now you're at a point where you're actually you're now running your own. You partner with the Open Center in New York.
Yeah.
To now teach on a whole different level.
Yeah. So now I'm actually running a certification program in positive psychology, trying to create more people that have a digested, packaged approach to being able to say, like, you know, there's so much out there in the world of positive psychology. Here's an effective way of teaching this to other people and using this in your own work. So I'm training coaches and teachers and HR professionals and people who work in business. And so basically anybody that works with people, wanting to give them that positive psychology that I've learned, that I've found to be most effective, in a way that they can go out and then spread it even wider. Because, you know, we need an army to make a shift in our planet and people's happiness and life satisfaction. And I've always loved both. Like, I love the ability to work with a lot of people and do teaching and spreading orally this work, and then also working individually with people within coaching. But I'd always felt like I love working individually, but I want to do really big work.
So this is interesting, because a question that I just got from one of our awesome viewers is, I'm going to pose it to you based on what you were just saying, and what they asked me was fundamentally, is it better to affect 10 people deeply or 1,000 people not quite as deeply? I
would say both, and it depends on what you're affecting them with. Because affecting them not as deeply, but you make an effect. It was sort of like, I was talking, who was I talking to? I was, one of the other projects I'm working on right now is this role of wanting to work with the practice of Judaism and bring in positive psychology to help shift the field into being perhaps one that's a little bit more evidence-based and is focused even more on helping people flourish. And so he talked about how sometimes the practice has been to take people in these really like rich 2-week-long spiritual experiences and, you know, get them to really feel Jewish, like send them to Israel for 2 weeks, and they will come back with this stronger sense of who they are and stronger sense of faith. And research shows that those big events will shift you a little bit, but they don't shift you over time, because we come back to a set point. Whereas if you do a little bit every day, you know, and you have that little bit of a practice every single day, that's what creates change over time. So if you have a, you know, broad spread impact on a lot of people, but you give them one small concept that they, you know, sticks with them, like practicing gratitude on a daily basis, like that might seem really small, but in the long run, that's really going to affect it. But then I know what you meant by having a really deep impact, like, you know, the one that's sustainable is different. And I just, like I said, I think
so I guess
there's
no easy answer.
Yeah, and I think you
like
need both.
Yeah.
And people will find, I think it also talks to people's personality. Like some people are so good one-on-one, and they feel like they lose a little part of themselves when they try to go big. Other people really thrive in that way, but it's a little stressful feeling responsible to help one person along to, you know, in that deeper way. So I think it has to do with the person.
No, I like that answer because it's not clean. Because life isn't clean, and it's just sort of the reality. I want to wrap it up. It's been an awesome conversation, but the name of this project is Good Life Project. When I offer that phrase to you, what does it mean to you to live a good life?
What does it mean to me to live a good life? It means to flourish, and it means to do your personal best and be in alignment with who you are, and work on the multi-dimensions and the richness of being alive. So it means a flourishing life where you feel good, you feel at peace with your past, you feel optimistic about your future, and you, at the moment, do the best that you can to be present and to be happy and to be in alignment with who you are.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I'm Jonathan Fields. My guest today has been Emiliya Zhivotovskaya, and we're here with the Good Life Project. Thanks so much.